Hey, David Brewster here with another episode of Chordplay, and this is the chords of a perfect circle. And I've been a perfect circle fan, from the very beginning. I was already a Tool fan, and when I heard about the group that, Maynard was kind of forming with Billy Howerdel, I was kind of interested. I was like, okay, what's this? And then when I heard it, I was blown away. There was a lot of interesting, textures and sounds, and obviously, Maynard's voice, kind of brought this Tool, vibe or, whatever, this dark flavor mixed with the bizarre chords and textures and there was a lot of acoustic guitar and it was all like detuned really low. And honestly, as soon as I heard their music, it triggered something in my ear and my head and I was like, whoa. And at the time, I'd never really thought about, tuning my guitar low as far as like an acoustic. I'd played around with like tuning my electric down a half step and drop D and stuff like that. But at the time, I was kind of in the habit of always tuning acoustics to standard. And I've always liked acoustic guitar. And, honestly, I guess the three guitarists that really kind of turned me on to, like alter tunings and drop tunings with acoustic guitars would be, Jimmy Page, Michael Hedges, and then obviously, Billy Howerdel, from A Perfect Circle because Billy created these really interesting chords and sounds with a detuned acoustic. So this lesson's going to be all acoustic and it's going to be all detuned. And so we're technically tuned down 1.5 steps. So just think of, it's 3 half steps down or 1.5. So your low E string is going to be a C sharp or D flat, however you want to think of it. So it's standard tuning, but 3 half steps lower than normal. So here's a traditional, like E major, like open position chord. And you can hear it's very, very out of tune. But it's very low, right? So you may not be used to, tuning your guitar that low. So it's, interesting to kind of hear the guitar like that, though. I find it inspiring. All right, most of the examples from this lesson are going to be from Mer de Gnome and 13th Step. So the first two Perfect Circle albums. And, not that I was, not able to kind of find other examples and other, from other albums, but I don't know, like the most recent, Eat the Elephant had a lot of piano, and it seemed like the acoustic guitars had kind of been replaced by piano, which is fine, but it did kind of change the flavor and sound. And I wish some of those songs actually had acoustic guitar more prominent than so much piano, because it seemed like every other song was very prominent in the piano department, which, I love the piano, but I don't know. I kind of wish there was more acoustic, kind of the dark, flavors and sounds we're going to look at in this lesson. All right, the first example is from the song Rose, which is from Mer de Gnome, and this, kicks it off with a really interesting chord, and it's just this unsettling, eerie sound, but I was drawn to it as soon as I heard it. I was like, what in the world? So it's an E minor add 9, but it's a slash chord, so we're going to have F sharp in the bass, and it's this ringing, sustained, spooky sound. And then he ends up, adding the D right there on the A string, and that's just going to make it an E minor 9, over D. That. But a really bizarre chord. The next example comes from the song A Stranger, which is from a 13th Step. And 13 Steps are a great, album. I love the first two Perfect Circle albums. And I do like Emotive, and I like Eat the Elephant too. And there's some other, like some other albums too. I didn't really get into like the other releases, but the first two are exceptional. But anyway, This has a really interesting A7. There's no third in the shape, but it's A7, and then it goes to like a C6. And I really like this little chord exchange. And I love that progression. It's really cool because you've got the first shape, which is a really unusual A7. And then he just adds a C, on the low E string there. And then right there, lift up your index finger and play the D string open. And then it's ready to, repeat the pattern back at that A7 chord again. So that's C6. I love that. That's really cool. All right, the next example is from the song Howerdel, which is from Howerdel. And this has an A7 sharp 11 shape, which is really cool. You got the second fret on the D and the fourth fret on the B, and then everything except for the low E string, but everything else is open. So you've got this very, disturbing, unsettling chord, which, by now you should realize I really like these unusual chords and sounds. So you've got this picking pattern, and he's kind of picking close to the bridge. I also like the way that sounds if you finger pick it. Play with the dynamics too, which is kind of cool. Like, it kind of fades in, and you can kind of mimic the fade, and that's really good practice. Kind of learning how to manipulate the strings, different volume and attack strengths, like this. The next example is from Orestes, which is from Howerdel. And this has a really interesting E minor 7, and then it moves to an F major 9. And both shapes are really, really interesting. And this is a tricky chord progression. So you could almost approach this like a warm-up or a hand, challenge or a fretboard challenge. Because, the best way to fret both of these chords, I think I found this, fingering the best. Got that, and then you're going to switch to that F major 9. And that's a tricky little progression right there. It's really hard to make that change and not have that little squeak too, which is so frustrating and annoying. Those damn squeaks. The last example here is from Three Libras, which is also from Howerdel, and this has a very distinct fingerstyle pattern. And some people might associate this with Blackbird by the Beatles, and that's very it's very reminiscent of that. But there's a lot of classical guitar pieces that have this kind of finger picking pattern, and that's kind of what I relate it to a little bit more than Blackbird. But it's very similar, either way, however you want to look at it. But it starts off with this C sus2 shape, and you're basically doing, I'm going to use this fingering, middle finger on the, third fret on the A, and third finger on the third fret on the B. And then we're also, we're going to pluck that and also hit, the open G string, that kind of thing. And then basically what happens right there is you're going to lift up your middle finger and release the bass note, but keep the fretted note there on the 3rd fret on the B string. And make sure you're in tune. But what you're going to do is lift up the bass note, with your middle finger. And then right there, keep your 3rd finger, on the B string, and you're going to slide up to the 7th fret. And it's okay to kind of hear a little bit of that slide. And then right there, you want to do the same thing, but slide up to the 10th fret. And if you get there, that's going to be a G sus2. So, you're really just kind of playing with the fingering, but you're creating a chord progression, C sus2, that'd be an E minor add 9, and then back to that C sus2, and then that would be a G sus2. And then you're gonna, kind of cycle through that like this. And basically right there you're going to do that E minor add 9 again, and then just slide it up a half step, and then you're going to have an F sus2. So that's interesting having that little, half step change there. And then right there, it's going to feel like you're doing a C sus2, but that's actually going to be an F major 9 right there, and just strum everything except for the low E string, but include those open strings. And you'll have something that sounds like this. It's going to wrap up this look at some chords from A Perfect Circle, and definitely they have a huge selection of interesting chords and mysterious sounds and unusual textures with acoustic and electric guitars too. But I found so many useful and kind of interesting acoustic and kind of clean chords in their music that this was a really easy episode to make. So leave some feedback and some comments, and please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back with some more content and lessons before you know it. Thank you.